Donald Trump stood before the cameras and said a name. And the moment he said it, the world shifted. Ali Khamenei. The man who has ruled Iran since 1989. The man who survived assassinations, outlasted sanctions, crushed uprisings, and buried his enemies for 36 years. The man the Islamic Republic was built around. The living symbol of a revolution that was never supposed to depend on any single human being. Today, that man is dead. And the part that should stop you cold, the part that changes everything about how you understand what happened today, is this. It was not a missile that found him. It was not a satellite. It was not a cyber operation or an electronic intercept. It was a person. Someone who sat close to him. Someone he trusted. Someone who knew exactly where he would be today, at what time, with whom, and made the decision to tell someone who wanted to find him. Trump's announcement left no ambiguity. The supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran is gone, struck today in what American and Israeli sources are now describing, without hesitation, as a betrayal that came from inside his own walls. Israeli sources speaking to major news organizations within the last hour were precise about what happened. The timing of today's strikes was accelerated, not because of new satellite imagery, not because of signals intelligence, because human intelligence arrived. A source, a person with direct first-hand access to Khamenei's schedule and location, a person who knew about a high-level meeting taking place today, a gathering of Khamenei and senior Iranian officials conducted under the tightest operational security the Islamic Republic maintains, transmitted those details outward. And when that intelligence arrived, Israel moved immediately. Think carefully about what that means in practice. For Israel to receive advanced knowledge of a specific meeting, its location, its timing, its participants, someone either in that meeting or with direct access to the planning of that meeting made a choice. They used whatever communication channel they had previously established with Israeli or American intelligence, and they sent the information through. This is not a peripheral leak. This is not someone on the edges of the Iranian system passing along vague assessments about intentions or capabilities. This is someone at the center, someone with access to the supreme leader's calendar, someone trusted enough to know where Khamenei would be, at what hour, behind which walls, surrounded by which men. The Islamic Republic spent 46 years engineering a system specifically designed to make this impossible. Revolutionary Guards whose entire identity, whose entire meaning is fused to the system they protect. Intelligence services that surveil the surveyors. Concentric rings of loyalty testing, ideological vetting, and internal surveillance around every significant figure, and most relentlessly around the supreme leader himself. The architecture of that system was built on one foundational assumption, that ideological commitment, reinforced by fear, reinforced by surveillance, reinforced by the total identification of personal fate with the fate of the revolution, would hold, that no one close enough to matter would ever break. That assumption failed today, not from the outside, from within the room. And then there is what Trump said next, because this is where the story deepens beyond the military operation itself. When asked about Iran's future leadership, about who might fill the vacuum left by Khamenei's death, Trump's answer was not a deflection. It was not a standard diplomatic non-answer. He said in his own words that the United States has very good ideas about the next leader of Iran. Very good ideas. That is not a throwaway phrase. Presidents of the United States do not casually announce that they have ideas about who should lead a foreign nation unless those ideas are grounded in something real, in active conversations, in active relationships, in commitments that have already been extended to people inside Iran who are positioning themselves for what comes after. The implication is not subtle. If Washington has good ideas about Iran's next leadership, it means Washington has been talking to people inside Iran who expect to have a role in what follows. And if Washington has been talking to those people have been talking to Washington, which means the intelligence relationship that produced today's betrayal of Khamenei is not a single transaction. It is part of a longer, deeper architecture of contact between American and Israeli intelligence and figures inside the Iranian system who decided at some point that their future lies on the other side of this conflict. Now, there is a question that serious observers have been raising throughout the day, and it deserves a direct, honest answer. Where is the nuclear justification? When this operation was presented to the American public, when Trump addressed the nation and explained why American forces were engaged in large-scale military operations against Iran, the word nuclear was everywhere in the framing. Iran cannot be permitted to have a nuclear weapon. The threat of a nuclear-armed Iran is existential. The urgency of the nuclear program justifies the urgency of the military response. That was the stated case. That was the logic offered to the public. But look at what was actually struck today. Look at the operational priorities as they have emerged through the reporting. The targets have been Khamenei's compound, the presidential complex, a high-level leadership meeting, the Revolutionary Guard command structure. Fordo is not the headline. Natanz is not the headline. The uranium enrichment infrastructure that was supposed to represent the central military objective of any operation against Iran is not what the images and reports from today are about. The images are about a leadership meeting that was struck based on human intelligence provided by a traitor inside that very meeting. This gap between the stated justification and the observable operational reality deserves more than a passing acknowledgement. Not because the nuclear program is not a genuine concern. It is. But because when a military operation of this magnitude is justified on one basis and executed with different priorities, the public is owed an honest accounting of what the actual objectives were. Regime change and nuclear disarmament are related goals, but they are not the same goal. And that distinction matters enormously for how this operation will be judged, legally, morally, and historically. Now consider the photographs. Israeli sources have indicated that images will be released, images of the aftermath of the strikes on Khamenei's location, images intended to provide visual confirmation of what happened inside that compound today. And the sourcing of those images, according to what the intelligence picture now shows, points directly back to the betrayal itself. The photographs that document what happened, the images of those rooms and those moments, did not come from Israeli drones or American reconnaissance assets flying overhead. They came from inside. They came from the source or sources within Khamenei's circle, who made the choice to collaborate, who were inside the event itself, who documented it, captured it, and transmitted it outward through channels that had been established in advance specifically for this purpose. Consider what that level of premeditation means. Whoever did this did not simply answer a phone call from an intelligence handler and pass along a schedule. They were present, they were documenting, they were operating, calmly and deliberately, from inside the most protected environment in the Islamic Republic, with the patience and discipline that only comes from a decision that was made long before today. This was not a panicked disclosure. This was a planned intelligence operation conducted from within the innermost circle of the Iranian state. The tradecraft involved is extraordinary. The patience required is almost incomprehensible. The risk calculation that someone made, weighing the catastrophic personal cost of exposure against whatever they were promised or whatever they believed in exchange for this betrayal, is the kind of decision that reshapes history. We do not know who it was. We may not know for years. We may never know publicly. Intelligence services protect their sources absolutely, and whoever provided this information will be extracted, resettled, given a new identity, and kept far from any public accounting for what they did. That is the deal. It is always the deal. But the consequences of what they did are visible to the entire world tonight. Khamenei struck in his own protected meeting. The most secure space in Iran revealed as penetrated. His inner circle exposed as compromised. And Trump standing before cameras telling the world that Washington already has very good ideas about who comes next. Iran could not protect its own supreme leader. That sentence, that fact, is being processed tonight by every government, every military, every intelligence service on earth. Not just as a fact about Iran specifically, but as a lesson about what happens when a state's internal loyalty structures collapse under sufficient external pressure, sufficient financial inducement, sufficient promise of a different future on the other side of a calculated betrayal. The Islamic Republic built its legitimacy on the idea that the system transcended any individual. The revolution, not the personality. The ideology, not the dynasty. The vilayat-e-faqih, the guardianship of the Islamic jurist, was supposed to be self-protecting and ideologically immune to the kind of individual defection that brings down ordinary governments. Tonight, that concept has been shattered, not because the ideology was defeated in argument, because the men closest to the man at the center of the entire system decided that the ideology was worth less than what they were offered in exchange for abandoning it. The Islamic Republic's deepest fear has never been military defeat. Iran has absorbed military punishment before. The existential fear has always been internal collapse, that the revolutionary generation would be replaced by a quietly disillusioned, pragmatic generation that maintained the outward forms of loyalty while privately doing the math on their options. That calculation happened today, and it produced results that the whole world can see. What comes next for Iran is a question no one can answer with confidence tonight. The succession question, which was already complex and contested before today, now collides with the betrayal question. Because whoever emerges to lead Iran in the aftermath of this conflict will do so knowing that the previous leadership was undone from within, knowing that Washington says it already has very good ideas about who should sit in that chair next. That knowledge will define the character of whatever leadership follows. Whether Iran moves toward accommodation with the West because the alternative has been demonstrated to be unsurvivable. Whether a new leadership responds with radical hardening, internal purges, and a determination to rebuild on a foundation of even more extreme loyalty enforcement. Or whether the system fragments entirely, producing a power struggle between factions of the Revolutionary Guard, the clerical establishment, and whatever reform-oriented elements survive the current moment. Trump's comment about having very good ideas for a new leader is being read tonight in Tehran, in Moscow, in Beijing, and in every capital that is watching this conflict as a declaration of intent. Washington is not merely fighting a war. Washington is managing a transition. The United States has, or believes it has, relationships inside Iran sufficient to shape what comes after the current regime. Whether that confidence is warranted, whether the people Washington is talking to actually possess the power, the legitimacy, and the popular support to lead a stable Iran, is the question that will determine whether this moment ends with a new order or with a prolonged and catastrophic unraveling. But one thing is certain tonight. The betrayal that brought down Khamenei did not come from satellites. It did not come from signals intelligence or cyber operations or any of the technological instruments that modern states deploy to watch their enemies. It came from a human being who made a choice built from disillusionment or calculation or greed, or a belief that the side they were secretly working for was the right side of history. A choice made in a room where Khamenei sat surrounded by the men he trusted most. Iran's supreme leader fell because someone who knew exactly where he was decided to tell the people who wanted to find him. No bunker stops that. No ideology prevents it. No surveillance system catches it when the betrayal is already inside the room. When the door is open from within, it does not matter how many locks were on it.